Great lawyers don't always know how to build great law firms. Let's change that. Join Ben Gideon as he shares hard-won lessons from building his own financially successful law firm and practical insights from top law firm entrepreneurs, business consultants, and more. This is a podcast for lawyers, by lawyers. Welcome to Elevate, Build, and Grow Your Law Firm. Produced and powered by Law Pods.
Today's episode of the Elevate, Build, and Grow Your Law Firm podcast is brought to you by Supio. I just spent an hour doing a webinar with the Supio folks. It was great. We had the head of business development and also one of the lawyers from Texas who's been an early adopter of Supio and walked through some case models of how you use Supio to put a case together. It was very, very impressive. I would encourage everyone who doesn't yet have an AI platform for their law firm, if they're a plaintiff's side, personal injury, medical malpractice type of law firm, check out Supio and get the demo. Our podcast today is also brought to you by Vision Spark. Vision Spark is the company that helps law firms and other businesses find seconds in command. You know any seconds in command, Jeff?
That would be me. It's exactly where I want to be.
When I think of number two, I always think of Jeff.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate that.
We have Vision Spark to credit for the search process that led us to Jeff, and then Jeff has led us to the holy grail of, it appears, to doubling our revenues in less than a year of your time at our firm. So it's all paid off very well. Anybody who needs a second in command like Jeff, I would encourage you to talk to Vision Spark. Our podcast is also brought to you by 1% for Planet. 1% for Planet, folks, is the organization that allows you to contribute 1% of your gross revenues to environmentally conscious nonprofits. Our firm has done that. It's a great organization that's allowed us to partner with some really terrific nonprofits in Maine and throughout northern New England, and we really would love to have other firms join us in that. And if you do join us in 1%, please reach out to us and we'll give you a plug on the show.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Elevate, Build, and Grow Your Law Firm podcast. I'm Jeff Wright, Chief Operating Officer at Gideon. As always, our host, partner, owner, Ben Gideon. Good morning, Ben.
Morning, Jeff. How are you today?
I'm good. Well, usually Ben and I do a little banter at the beginning, but I'm excited. I'm excited for our guests today.
Yeah, me too.
You're gonna what?
I want to. Well, you do the introduction, then I'll do something.
All right,
go for it, Jeff.
I look forward to that. So today we're joined by Arlo Devlin Brown, former federal prosecutor, U.S. Attorney's Office in New York, currently managing principal at TDB Law Firm, a boutique white-collar firm in New York City. That's your most recent foray into the legal world with, I believe, your partner, Tim, there. Welcome, Arlo.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Good to have you.
So the part of your bio you left out was that Arlo and I were co-clerks together back in 1999/2000 era, right?
Yeah, we met clerking on the First Circuit in Portland, Maine, and Ben introduced me to everything Maine had to offer. And then, after working with me in New York City for a couple of years after the clerkship, went back to, his home state. He's made a little something of himself since then.
After our clerkship, we took a little trip. Arlo and I spent about a month in Nepal doing a trek around the Annapurna Circuit. That was a pretty amazing experience, actually. I still think about it a lot.
Yeah,
How about you?
I mean, that was one of the best trips I've taken in my life. And it was sort of a reminder, to everyone, right? I mean, that was a time we had sort of between jobs, right? Where ending a clerkship, starting something new. And for anyone who has that opportunity to take a month or something before they have to do something else where there's not, you don't have to bring clients with you or something like that, take that opportunity. You're not going to regret it later.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of times people interview for jobs with us and ask, if they're leaving another job, if it's okay if they take a little time between the jobs. And I always encourage people, yes, you should take time. It's the only time that you can have time off without having to worry about other responsibilities or stuff going on at the office. So after our memorable clerkship and our month in Nepal together, Arlo's had a meteoric career where he's done all kinds of very impressive things, whereas I just came back to Maine and became an ambulance chaser lawyer. So Arlo, why don't you talk a little bit? Can you just give us a thumbnail sketch of your career and just some of the high points of it before we get into your new venture, your law firm, and what's gone into starting and building that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, leaving my clerkship and probably even a little before, I had thought, maybe it would be fun to be a federal prosecutor. You get to do cool cases. And I was going to go to New York. The Southern District of New York had a great U.S. Attorney's Office, often does, sort of very high profile cases. You can't go straight there from law school for the most part. So I worked as a associate at law firm in New York for about 5 years, had a great experience, had a couple mentors there who were former federal prosecutors. Two of them are now federal judges in Manhattan. And, through that experience and their kind words about me, was able to get a job in the U.S. Attorney's Office. I stayed there for 10 years. I think every time someone would ask me, I would say, I'll stay another 2 years. And then, a decade happened, but it was such a wonderful place to work. I did everything ranging from organized crime cases to being a member of the securities fraud unit, getting involved in some of the Madoff related prosecutions and some big hedge fund insider trading cases. I was then about to leave and was asked to stay to be chief of the public corruption unit. Public corruption used to still be a crime back then, and stayed for 2 years and had a great experience. Then I went to
I think public corruption is now a department of the United States government, right?
yes. So yeah, I went to Covington and Burling, a fantastic large law firm. I was a partner in their white collar investigation space for nearly a decade. And then, I just got a little bit of a bug in me to try something different. Covington was wonderful, but, I just turned 51, wanted to try something else. So I started a law firm with my friend, Tim Treanor, who I knew from the U.S. Attorney's Office and seen around. And he had just left Sidley, another large law firm, a few months earlier, and it's hung out his own shingle. And we started talking. And 6 months ago, we started our firm.
So tell us a little bit about how did that conversation unfold? I mean, it's a big decision to leave a secure job at a big prominent firm. Sure, you had a dependable source of business, secure opportunities, and obviously compensation opportunities there. So leaving all that to just hang out your own shingle and start your own practice, that's a big move. Talk a little bit about the discussions you had around that and the thought process.
Yeah, so it was very personal for me. I was Covington, being a law firm partner at a large law firm, is a very well compensated job, and it's a fairly secure job if you're putting in some effort. And I could have stayed there, I think, in 15 years or something, retired, and said, okay, that was a fine career. But you really do get a sense of, number one, you're not going to be here on this planet forever. You're not going to be able to try other things in a different life. And I wanted to challenge myself. I wanted to do something I hadn't done before. And I think in terms of risk taking, I think we lawyers, maybe less so you're a plaintiff's lawyer, so you're doing a lot of contingent fee work where there's risk. But I think we tend to, as a profession, overestimate the risk of taking new business steps. And I think on your podcast, Ben, actually, you had a guest, or maybe you remember the statistic about small businesses failing very frequently, and that's not true for lawyers, right? And so I wasn't really worried about failing. I have a lot of people who refer cases to me. I have a good reputation as a lawyer. And so I went into this thinking, hopefully this will be a fantastic new venture. If it isn't, I'm not going to be penniless on the streets. I'm going to find something else to do to live my life in a way that is rewarding and fulfilling. And that was kind of it.
Is there anything you and your partner, Tim, are trying to do differently? You guys kind of similar paths. Ben was an equity partner at a very well-established firm, very easily could have stayed there another decade or so and retired comfortably. But he wanted to not only challenge himself, but he wanted to do some things differently than what the larger firms are doing. Is there anything you and Tim talked about in regards to doing differently with your own firm?
Yeah, I think so. Large law firms are great, and they're great for clients who need big teams often and who need multiple practice areas. They need, people who have expertise in countries around the world, corporate M&A, structuring certain transactions, sanctions rules. That's great. It can also present challenges working in my space, which has mostly been white collar defense and investigations. There's conflicts that emerge when you have, so many corporate clients, actual legal conflicts, but sometimes just sort of positional conflicts of, you shouldn't take a certain case because it's going to offend a corporate client who, wouldn't like that position. The business model is very leveraged, and there's some types of cases it just doesn't make sense for a large firm to take on that I think you can do in a more boutique setting. So that was fundamentally part of why we wanted to do this. We wanted to be able to do the cases we wanted to do and thought we could do a lot of them without, sort of the large infrastructure of a big law firm. And, that has proven to be the case.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you've done to date to build your practice, and what have been the biggest challenges that you've encountered that you didn't expect to encounter when you started?
It's been a challenge to build anything new. We are sharing someone else's office space right now. They've been very gracious. We're hopefully going to have a lease on new space soon. We've hired a couple of people. That's always sort of a challenge of, if you wait until you have, provable revenue before you hire people, then you're just going insane doing work that you shouldn't be doing and not having time to run your business. So you have to make some calculations of, okay, I think we're going to have enough to keep this person busy. So we have an of counsel who's a very senior lawyer who, sort of works on specific cases. We have a associate who is part-time because she's starting a clerkship in the fall and wanted a, semi-flexible schedule. And we have an analyst who is a, young person who just left college and is looking to go to law school in a couple of years and very capable of doing a lot of the sort of fact analysis work that I think in previous cases would often exclusively be reserved for associates, even when it's not really legal work that needs an associate. We've built out a bit that way. In terms of challenges we faced, I mean, one challenge, and Ben, I'm sure you've thought about this too, it's sort of a who do we want to be kind of challenge. Because, there's a couple things, you go out there with a vision of what you want your firm to be, right? And then there's what the market wants to hire you for. And you have to kind of match those things a little bit. If you have a vision of this is what we're going to do, period, and the market's not going there, then you're going to fail. But at the other extreme, if you just say, well, people are calling me for these insurance defense cases, wow, and then you do a few and so you're doing well, and now you have a team of 20 that's doing insurance defense cases, then maybe you wake up in 5 years and say, but wait, this isn't the business I wanted to start. So it's a little bit thinking of sort of what you want to build. And one of the thoughts we have, which in addition to the white collar defense and investigations, is we want to do some work in the crypto space. We both started talking about that's really an area where there's, I think, a lot of opportunities to do work addressing fraud in this sector, which is really just rampant, and there haven't been a lot of great solutions for it yet.
Did you and your partner sit down and come up with a vision plan or initial kind of business plan, or are you just kind of getting going and then seeing kind of early on where that takes you?
Yeah, I've actually found your podcast once we reconnected very very helpful, and was very intimidated when you talked about your vision plan and Jeff, all the things that you put into place. And I'm giving myself a little bit of a pass that, some of what you were doing was sort of stage 2 of growing your business. We did, talk about a plan, and we have some ideas about what we want to do. One thing we did last month, and we're going to make it like a quarterly thing now. We meet every week sort of about the cases and things ahead of us. But we're now doing sort of quarterly meetings where, it's more try to do it out of the office, a more sort of free form session where we can really sort of strategize. And I think we'll probably do something, maybe at the beginning of the year where we maybe take a day or two and do something like that, because I think that's obviously very, very important to do.
How did you guys go about assessing like the market need for another firm? I mean, we're a little different. We're up in Maine. It's not nearly as saturated, but anyone listening to this that may be in Los Angeles or New York or Philly thinking about making the move, hanging out their own shingle, but looking at a very well established, saturated market. How did you and Tim, did that discussion happen, and how did you address it?
We thought about that because it is a pretty saturated market in New York. And, we do civil litigation, we do trial work too, but what we're really known for is, white collar defense and investigations. Most of our network are former federal prosecutors. And it's, not actually a very busy time for white collar investigations work these days. So, we did think about that, but we'd seen a number of people who had either left large law firms or sometimes leaving the U.S. Attorney's Office, started their own practice, and they've been very successful. And I think part of it is the economics of large law firms doing a huge range of white collar cases. It just doesn't work very well for a lot of those cases. And so I found, sort of my network of friends who wouldn't call me when I was working at Covington because probably they assumed it would be a case I couldn't do. I wouldn't be able to handle there. Maybe they were right, maybe they were wrong sometimes, but when you set up a boutique, they think of you for these cases where there's an individual they can pay, or it's a company, they have a small matter they can pay, but they don't need or want a sort of very highly leveraged structure, running some kind of massive case.
Makes sense.
Have you thought in terms of what you'd like to build in terms of the scale of it? I mean, do you have an idea? Would this be just you and your partner and maybe, an of counsel or two, an associate or two, or are you looking to, build the next medium to, I mean, you're not going to build the next Covington or, Sidley,
Yeah.
but likely not in your lifetime, probably. Just given
Yeah.
the time frame it would take to hire
Yeah. Thanks,
thousands
man.
of
I'm
lawyers.
going to die. Yeah.
I'm sure going to be around for quite a while. You look great, by the way. One wouldn't aspire to do that probably if you left a big law to build the next big law. But do you have an idea of the scale of what you are trying to build? And I guess as part of that is, do you envision yourself continuing to do the day-to-day practice of law, try the cases, interface with all the clients, or do you envision yourself at some point taking on more of a managerial role and kind of building out a business where other people are doing the day-to-day practice of law and you're benefiting from their labors?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, I do think we definitely want to grow. I think it's hard to do things where you're sort of two or three very senior lawyers, maybe one or two associates. That's not the scale we need to have. We need to be somewhat bigger. It needs to be so that, if there's a significant case, it's not something that's going to tie up me and my partner, and we can't run the business or bring in new cases or anything like that. So I think we, want to grow and expect to grow over the next couple of years. But I think, we don't envision trying to become a 50 lawyer firm or anything like that. I think that would be more than we would want to be. I'm not sure what the exact right size of it would be. But to your other question, I think that's an important one in terms of running a business versus actually practicing law. Right now, I'm having a lot of fun with the running the business part of it, even stuff that's kind of dumb. Like it was fun to go in and open my first corporate bank account, right? Lawyer trust account. And, it's kind of fun to learn about some of the legal tech software. And I felt, some real pride actually when we hired our first W-2, employee as an analyst. Like I'm participating in the economy in a way that like I haven't before. I mean, I guess at Covington, I was a part owner and hiring people, but you don't feel it as directly, right, as when you offer someone a job. And so all of that is really, really fun, but a lot of it is not my, highest and best use either, right? And I need to be conscious of that. So I think, the chief operating officer idea is great that you have there. I've also heard the advice of, before you hire people to do tasks for you, you need to know what the task is and understand it. And so I think the idea is, let me learn some of these aspects of the business. Let's get people on board eventually who can do those things. And then I can, divide my time, I think, between sort of, more creative business development, establishing what our identity is. And I do want to keep practicing law. I do want to keep doing cases. They're super fun. But I could see a point, maybe 5, 10 years down the road where I'm doing much less of that and I'm just sort of helping, our business have a place out there in the market.
One interesting thing when I started here, Arlo, and it's hasn't even been a year yet. I started in January. When I was here a little over a week, and then we went to an offsite strategic planning out in Denver, and I wasn't sure what to expect. But and to your point, it was kind of phase two of the strategic growth, but we knew what type of firm, or Ben and Taylor already knew what type of firm we wanted to be. It was complex med mal, catastrophic PI. So a lot of our first discussions were around core values and culture, and what type of culture we wanted to build. And what we came up there has really driven our hiring focus, has driven a lot over the last year. Have you and your partner gotten to a point where you've talked about culture and the core values that you want your firm to represent?
Yeah, I did listen to you guys talk about that on your podcast, and I think Tim and I have both thought of that. I think we have similar core values, but I think going through the exercise of sort of articulating them, and then also thinking about how to concretely build those things. And I think that's something we'll have to think a lot about as we add people to our team. I think we're looking for, we want an entrepreneurial environment. We want people to be energized and creative and trying to think of what they can do to bring things to the next level. But we also very much don't want sort of a siloed environment or internally competitive environment. I think those things can be very negative for law firms too. We don't want someone who's just going to come in and say, "Yeah, this is a good platform for me to make some bucks for the next few years, and then someone else will give me a better platform." We want to build something that has some kind of identity, and I think balancing those two things is kind of a challenge for a lot of firms. I don't know how you guys have thought of that and how you address that. I know the contingency fee model probably makes it somewhat different, but there must be similar things to grapple with.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to hear you talk about it, Arlo, because we pretend. Oh, I mean, Jeff, as he mentioned, has been here for just under a year, and our firm has been in existence for about 5 years, which is not all that long, really, but a lifetime because of what you go through and learn in those early years and your mindset and growth. And so many of the things we've learned and come to have been through trial and error and making mistakes. And the core values, I mean, we talk about it now, but for many years, we didn't live out any clear core values. We aspired to do certain things, but we're not fulfilling them. We hired people that didn't meet those values, and they're no longer here. So we came to those realizations through the hard experiences of life that have led us to really reinforce, because you can read about them in a book, but then when you live it and see how it plays out, it has a much larger impact in your thinking and actions than just, theoretical knowledge of it. You're in a place where you're still trying to get your feet under you and figure all this kind of stuff out. It's interesting. You're right where we were basically when we started. So I'm not, I think we've learned a lot, but you're probably ahead of where we were for your stage of development. What are for people that are in your role, position looking to build a firm, and maybe they're not quite where you are yet, or they're in a parallel position, what are kind of some of the resources you're finding that are useful, both from a business standpoint, from kind of putting the technology, the nuts and bolts together that you're putting together there, website, everything?
I think this is like a great time to start a law firm in terms of what's out there to support you. I mean, it's really remarkable how much you can readily sort of outsource so that you can not worry about a lot of things. And then I understand at a time you might be at a size where you insource those things back. But, we have a terrific part-time bookkeeper who's a former, FBI agent, does some forensic accounting on the side. There's very good law practice management platforms. So we have one. We have an outside IT provider who, we pay a certain amount for up to 5 seats a month. And, they're our support desk. They set up our computers. They do, the information security stuff. So you can do a lot. So we use a PEO. I don't know if that's I don't actually know what the acronym stands for, but they're basically a co-employer of your employees, right? And so you can get someone to handle all the payroll stuff, benefit stuff, get access to healthcare plans that you couldn't as a small business. So that's all fantastic. And, we've also, I'm a pretty heavy believer in AI. I follow the technology really closely. I listen to like 4 podcasts a week, annoy people at parties. But I actually think
you were doing that before AI, Arlo. Just
yeah. Well, yeah, that's a fair point.
What are the podcasts you like on AI? I'm curious because I'm into that myself.
Yeah, there's one, I'm forgetting the name of it, by Paul Rotzer, the marketing AI Smarter X. He does sort of a business-minded sort of update on what's going on in the news, but I also listen to things that are really, pretty technical, like Last Week in AI, which is, 90% of it sometimes goes over my head when they're talking about, scientific papers. But I find it very fascinating. You don't have to
Are
understand.
you thinking about is that going to be a big tenet in how you structure the business? Is the trying to find efficiencies through AI or use it to replace or supplement human personnel in some way?
Absolutely. Look, I think my own views about the technology, where it is right now, is that there are some real questions about whether large language models, that's what powers ChatGPT, et cetera, whether that's going to be the next, you're going to be able to continue on that path and have a breakthrough where you have a whole leap in intelligence, something that can generally be as intelligent as a person. You could, give it a fake associate that can just do the work. I think there's real questions about how much further that technology can go. But the technology that exists so far is amazing. And what is lacking is processes and applications that make that readily usable for lawyers to get stuff done. And I think that's what you're going to see in the next few years, is people building in those applications, and you're just going to be able to get a ton from it. I mean, right now, I would encourage it, anyone to do this. You should pay, $20 a month, or if you get an enterprise plan, it's like $25 a seat for ChatGPT, or pick Anthropic, or pick Gemini. Turn the settings so it's not training on your data. Be conscious of putting, getting client consent if you're going to put anything that's confidential in there, et cetera. But just use it and play around with it. ChatGPT, for example, you can select different modes. You can select a professional mode where you can give it much more finely tuned questions, and it'll go off and research for 20 minutes and come back to you with some really good understanding. We have the latest Westlaw AI, which has some advanced research capabilities, but I use it every day for all kinds of things. I mean, just one kind of example, this happens sometimes. We get a call or an email from a potential client saying, I was involved in this crypto project with this token, and this happened, and we were defrauded through this and this, and blah, blah, blah. And it's a lot of stuff that, is not dominant in the news. I dump the email into ChatGPT, necessarily the names of everyone if there's something sensitive, but the facts of it in. Then if you just say, go figure out what happened here, that's not going to work. You say, look, I'm considering taking this person on as a potential client. I need to know what this company is, what this crypto project is. Are there reports of fraud? Please check all sorts of internet forums. I need a report back on if there are allegations of fraud, who is alleged to be behind them, what ties to the United States do they have, what resources are they known to have, and it'll come back and it'll give you a report. Now, is that report going to be 100% right? Probably not. There are probably going to be some details that are wrong. But that's the problem I think a lot of lawyers have with AI. There are plenty of use cases where it doesn't need to be 100% correct to get value out of it. It can be 95% correct. It can be directionally correct with some details wrong. And if I then have a meeting with that client, my God, I'm so far ahead of where I would be if I hadn't had that tool. I could have asked an associate to go do that research. It would have taken an entire day at least. And there would have been errors there too. So just getting comfortable with using it for things like that, I think is fantastic and lets us do, a lot more for less.
Need help on a complex personal injury or medical malpractice case? Gideon accepts case referrals and regularly co-counsels with lawyers nationwide on high-value claims. The firm has recovered millions of dollars in cases that competitors turned away because they dig deeper. Ready to learn more? Email bgideon@gideonasonlaw.com to start the conversation. Gideon ASIN shares fees as permitted by the laws of each state. Don't let complex cases overwhelm your practice. Elevate justice together with Gideon ASIN.
What do you think the potential issues are with AI? I mean, obviously crypto, which you guys want to have a focus on, is I don't want to say has been the Wild West, but there's so much fraud happening. Do you see with the advancement of AI and how quickly things are changing, large language models, open source, do you see potential dangers with AI that actually might result in substantial litigation?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, there already is a great deal of litigation around AI. There's copyright cases, right? They were all trained essentially on copyrighted data, and there's very interesting questions about whether that's fair use. There's some very interesting litigation about the responsibility for AI, a machine, when it's having a relationship with a teenager who is turning to it, and maybe it's fueling some mental health crisis. And there have been lawsuits over people who've committed suicide tragically, based on some kind of relationship with AI. So I think there'll be a lot of litigation there. There could be some litigation. I think there has been actually where AI's put out erroneous information. There've been, I think, defamation kind of cases. So I think that'll be interesting. That's a whole very interesting area to watch as well.
Yeah. Going back to your origin, when someone's at a firm and they're thinking about leaving, Ben obviously chose to go with a partner, Taylor, and you obviously chose to go with Tim. Was your thought that if you were going to hang out a shingle, you would always have a partner, or was it just Tim was the right person, so you didn't want to do it on your own?
Yeah, I actually, my thought had been, I will do it on my own. Let me do something that's just in my own view of what I want to do, not have to answer to anyone. That was sort of the back of my mind. And early this past year, whenever I hear someone started their own practice or whatever, I go out and talk to them. And I talked to Tim, and he had started his, and it wasn't with the intention of I was going to go work with Tim. But then as we just started talking about some ideas for cases and what we wanted to do, it just sounded more fun. Like we had some similar ideas. We're also, different people, and we bring, different strengths. And so much as in my head, I like the idea of like, oh, I'll just do whatever I think is right. And that's much more fun. No one's going to tell me that's a bad idea. It's good to have someone who will tell you it's a bad idea, and vice versa. So it's a difficult, it's a challenging relationship for anyone to manage, right? Where you're going into business with someone and we're equal partners in this. So, we really have to form a consensus. And it's important, I think, to be able to, have that consensus and have some common foundation of what you want to do, but also, be able to disagree and hear each other out when you disagree, because otherwise you're not going to get the benefit of having, sort of leadership of an enterprise.
How hard was your process to exit Covington and the firm you were at? I mean, you don't have to get into details, but was it mutual? Did you have to get outside counsel involved to help negotiate your exit, or was it
I
relatively seamless?
think when you say was it mutual, I think that's code for I was fired. But
No,
no,
amicable. Amicable is better
yeah,
than mutual.
yeah, or also breakups, right? It was mutual. Yeah,
We don't want to
um,
get Jeff back into the topic of breakups again.
No.
yes, no, I heard from one. I sound like a fanboy of your podcast, but yeah, you've had a divorce. I've been divorced too. We can go on a separate podcast about that.
I
But
think we could.
What was harder, your actual divorce or the divorce from Covington? Let's just
no,
leave it at that.
Covington. Yeah. So to be clear, Covington was great. I mean, they were surprised. I was having a good career there. I don't think anyone wanted to see me go. When I said my goodbyes to people, I mean, there were definitely people who I think were a little hurt, maybe that I was leaving, or perplexed. I will also say, though, I heard in the voices of some, either expressly or implicitly, like, wow, I wish I was able to do that. I wish I could do that. It was very amicable, and they've referred work to me. There's some cases where Covington could do that case or I could do that case, but we're largely not competing in the same spaces. I mean, we're not going to do some kind of 30-person corporate investigation where we need teams all over the world. And there's often a lot of cases in the white collar space where a company may need representation, and then there may be some bunch of individuals that need representation, or the board needs its own counsel or an audit committee. And so there are opportunities that I hope will continue to work with them. There's some great people there.
Good. Yeah, I just think some of the trepidation of people, leaving, aside from the comfort of their firm, is, how much of a hassle is it going to be to exit somewhere where they've been for, a decade or so. And it sounds like yours was relatively seamless, which is good.
Yeah, it was relatively seamless. I mean, look, there's whenever you're a partner, an equity owner of a law firm, you have a partnership agreement, and there's things you got to deal with no matter where you are. But I don't think that's the kind of thing that should hold people up. If you should never feel like that's a handcuff, right? I mean, if you have a desire to do something different, you can't fall back on, well, it would be hard. Yeah, a lot of things are hard.
You mentioned that you were enjoying the business side of building your practice. What about it are you enjoying about it?
Part of it is just it's something I've never done. When I left the U.S. Attorney's Office, which is an amazing job, after 10 years, part of why I left is like, sure, there was still stuff I could learn, but I didn't feel challenged in the same way I did at the beginning. And then at Covington, being a big law firm partner, learned a lot there. But I hadn't had these challenges. So part of it is just the challenge of figuring out how you do these things. It's hard to articulate.
It's really eye-opening coming from a platform where you have everything taken care of for you, as I did,
Yes.
even in my, 20 lawyer firm. But at Covington, and I'm sure it's like, I was at a big firm myself, so
Yeah.
I know, but it's like that on steroids. Everything is taken care of for you. Your car service to get to your appointment, all of your staff, all of the back office functions, all of your CLEs or, your bar admission, everything is literally done for you. Now you're responsible for doing all of those things for yourself. That's pretty eye-opening at first, how many things there are that you didn't even appreciate have to be done. Right. And you mentioned sort of your highest and best use. It's like, I'm home doing my laundry. I always joke with my wife. It's like, it's not a good use of my time to be doing this laundry. I could be working right now, and there's
How does that go?
No, I'm not suggesting she do it for me. I'm just suggesting that, actually, maybe I am, but
Poor Sarah.
And I'm not even divorced. So my point being that you end up doing a lot of very kind of tedious tasks that would have been considered well beneath your stature as a partner at Covington, right? And you have to kind of be humble about that. But also at some point you realize, well, maybe this isn't the best use of my time. So how are you dealing with that whole barrage of things that you now have to do for yourself that you used to have others do for you?
Yeah. So look, two things. One is I think that is a real challenge because I actually find it fun. Like the first time I do it, like maybe the first time you try washing your clothespin, you'll find the machine fun. You can press all the buttons.
How does it work?
Watch him go around. It's exciting.
Yeah. So, like the first time, I had to figure out malpractice insurance, like that's cool. Like I have my own insurance thing. Then it comes up for renewal. Like, okay, I don't want, so it gets tedious. And it's also, even to the extent I may find some interest in some of the administrative parts of the business. Yeah, it's not the best use of my time. But I will say this, in terms of the trade-offs in both a place where you have to do everything yourself and a huge firm. The one thing I've told people when they say, what's different, and maybe this wears off then, I don't know, but every day when I wake up, and your head kind of clears, you're like, oh, what do I have to do today? Everything that I feel like I have to do today is because I feel like I have to do it. And that's a powerful feeling too. Like I may not want to fill out the malpractice insurance thing, but I know it's got to be done. Right? Big law or any big company. I wake up, there's a bunch of things. Yeah, I want to do those things. There's a bunch of things like, wait, there's a meeting on the this committee, and there's a mandatory training on that. And there's also that comes like just a lot of things that you don't think are things you should be spending your time on, but you don't have any control over it either. It's just like part of being in a large organization, the friction that comes with that.
Yeah, and I mean everything you're building for the benefit of yourself and your partner, and there's a nice feeling that goes along with that. Also, despite my comments about the laundry, and I do my own laundry, there's an empowering feeling to being able to do things, the things you need to do for yourself, and learning kind of the blocking and tackling of how all of that happens. You feel empowered by it. And then as you grow, as we have, I don't have to do most of those things for myself anymore. We have people that can do the CLEs and, send in the bar admission fees and handle the malpractice insurance and the finances and everything. But I know how all that works now. It's not a mystery to me anymore. And it's nice to know that. And it's also nice to appreciate what people are doing for you that, what you once had to do for yourself. So I don't know. I think there is some value in that in the early stages. One question I have for you is, you were kind of similar to me in that, timing of when we started our practices. I forgot you were younger than me because I'm 54 now and you said you were 51.
I may be off a year.
Yeah. But I know you're okay. So you're
I was born in 73, right? So what am I, 52?
Yeah, you're 2 years younger. So, we both kind of started practices at a phase in our life where neither of us could really afford to go a year without a paycheck. We have responsibilities, we have kids in college, and that's a different challenge than when you're, maybe fresh out of law school, hanging a shingle and eating ramen noodles in an apartment. You have to generate revenue in year one. Right. But on the flip side, hopefully, because of your success, you had some resources to invest in your firm to begin with. And it sounds like you did. You were able to, buy case management software and hire outside IT firms and put these pieces in place. So can you just talk a little bit about the timing of what it's like to start a firm at this age as opposed to when you're younger? And how do you think through the finances of having to replace what I assume was a relatively generous compensation scheme at Covington, within a few years so that you can meet all your own personal financial responsibilities?
Number one, a lot of people just need to think about what their financial needs and goals are, because, if you're trying to sort of just max out the numbers in your bank account, it may not be the right thing for you to do to start your own practice. If that was my goal, I don't think I would have done this. I don't know how lucrative this may be or not be, but if that's your mindset, that's your bottom line going into it, I need to or want to have this much money, it's maybe not the thing for you. You got to think about what else, makes you go in life. Of course, though, you need your own, you have expenses, you have things you got to take care of. I came to it at a point where I had enough money in the bank, had enough for the kids, to go through college, whereas if I don't have to take money out of this firm for, some period of time, that's okay. And then at some point, I will want to and need to. But, it's somewhat easier, being a former federal prosecutor, right? I spent 10 years getting paid what is a lot of money, maybe some places, some professions, but in New York City as a lawyer is not a lot at all. It's, a small fraction of what you can get as a law firm partner. And you know what? I was okay, right? Maybe I didn't go on as nice vacations, but I was okay and I was happy. And so I think you just need to think about your relationship with money and how it fits in with some of the other goals in your life.
Arlo, can you talk about when you started your firm? Obviously, you and your partner were known quantities individually, but your firm and the firm name brand new. How did you go about reaching out to centers of influence or people to let them know that you're hanging your own shingle and you would appreciate referrals and kind of build that network that you've probably had over the last 10, 20 years?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, I'd say there's two things. So one is the network of former prosecutors where we get, I think, most of our referrals. It's fantastic. The people who worked in the Southern District together, if you were there for 10 years, people 10 years older than you, 10 years younger, from when you're doing defense work, it's just great. And you see all these people, there's all sorts of events. And there's an element of interest when you strike out on your own and start a new firm. I mean, people seek you out at the cocktail party. They want to hear about it. It's more interesting than someone else. So that kind of gets you front of mind. And, people have thought of me that way. Here's the other thing, as a lawyer, especially, this kind of lawyer anyway, it's a very low bar to be interesting on LinkedIn. Um, most of my friends at larger firms, the only posts that they can ever make are, "It's an honor and with great pride I recognize the award in Law Dragon 970 of 8 of my colleagues in the blah-de-boo practice." And yeah, I mean, those are nice things. Actually, people should post those, but if I post anything like, I don't even think it's edgy, but I'll post something about crypto or AI, or I'll use AI to generate some artwork. I actually once did a AI avatar of me. It looked like me, but it was not me. I was typing in things and doing a crypto scam. And I go to these, events, and people are like, "Oh, you're the crypto stuff, and you do this and that." And so it's it makes an impression on people. The sort of crypto broader general public, that's a different challenge in marketing, and they're not on LinkedIn. So reaching other audiences, we still have to figure some of that out. But sort of the network of people that we already know, I think it's remarkably straightforward to kind of get them to think of you.
How do you think about, as you're thinking about scaling up, I mean, taking on each new case you take, assuming you have to think through, or do you have the time, do you have the resources currently to handle that work? And then where is the point where you say, well, this, we're at the breaking point, we've got enough or potentially too much, we should bring on somebody else, or we could just be more selective in the cases we take and turn down work? And how do you think about that as you're thinking about your next step?
Yeah, yeah. So we definitely do not want to turn down work. I mean, unless it's a bad case that we're just not going to be able to help the person. Particularly if it's coming from someone who's thought of us to refer it to. So we will try to do the work, and as long as it's something we think be successful at. And we've hired people. We're still looking to hire people. You have to sort of be a little bit optimistic about the future without being irrational. I think the hardest thing we're going to have to do, Ben, and it's something maybe I'll pick your brain about more, is we're open to and interested in doing contingent fee work in the right cases, large scale crypto scams, and some of these are very interesting cases. There are a lot of interesting legal issues. They may be hard to get litigation funding for, which is also very expensive, I've learned. So I think one of our challenges will be how to maybe invest in some of those cases while still, having resources to be paying associates who are, doing other things as well. So sort of balancing the ideal world, right, is we do well enough on the paying cases to be able to sort of fund smart bets on contingent fee matters. But there are not a lot of law firms that I think have cracked that nut in this kind of space. Boy Schiller is certainly one of them. Figuring out that, I think, is going to be our next kind of real challenge.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about your fee structure. I mean, it sounds like most of your cases are an hourly rate still, or do you do flat fees, or what?
Most are hourly rate or some sort of flat fee. We do have a few contingent fee matters. We were involved mostly before I joined in a very interesting crypto related class action that we're no longer involved in, but that was purely contingent fee slash court approved class fee. But yeah, so it's a mix of things. And people keep saying the hourly rate is going to die, right? They've been predicting it forever. But flat fees are really challenging too, because in the criminal defense, white collar investigation space, there's a lot you don't know when you're taking on a matter. So to say, I'll do this investigation for X price, or, oh yeah, the government just says they have a few questions for you, sure, let's settle on why. There's so many things you don't know. So pricing, I think, is still a really hard thing to do there.
Yeah, I mean, it's the contingent fee model. I'm so accustomed to it, and that's all we do. So it's second nature to us. But if it's not what you do, it really does raise lots of challenges. And as you mentioned that, we were just talking early this morning about funding, because we self-fund all of our cases. Extremely expensive to do that, but we have a model that allows that to work. But I guess it hadn't occurred to me how rare that is for people who don't do contingent fee work. You're not accustomed to funding cases at millions of dollars out of your own pocket.
Yeah, I would imagine, I mean, maybe I'm oversimplifying it or overstating it, but probably the beauty a little bit of what you do, high-end medical malpractice, is you're not always going to be right, but you can sort of value a case, right? Like, it's going to pay between this and this, and it's going to take between this many months and this many years, and have some kind of range. maybe you're wrong a lot, but I feel like since we haven't figured out what kind of cases we would do, I think there's going to be it's going to be a lot harder to value them.
Yeah, the valuation is an issue, but what ultimately makes it work for the firms, I think, where it works, and it's both the mixed firms that do mixed hourly rate and contingent and the pure contingent, is that they have a large enough docket of those cases that they're diversifying the risk across cases. You can't, if we just had one med mal case, that was going to be worth $0 if a defense verdict or $100 million, you can't take on that risk. We have many, many cases, and if some of them go south on us because we get a bad result despite our efforts, that's part of the business model. We expect that to happen, and it's risky. But just like anything, the risk is well managed because of the docket of work that we have. And I find that's often what the hourly rate firms run into. They'll see a contingent fee case every now and then, but they're implementing a totally different business model just for one case that doesn't really work with the rest of the practice. So it's just a hard thing to do. But I definitely think there are some very successful firms that have meshed the two. And I think that just means that you need to have some critical mass of those types of cases, whether it's 50% of your practice or 40% of your practice, but you just don't want to have one.
Because then you're just taking a flyer.
Yeah, it's just too risky. It's like going into the casino and putting all the money on one number on the roulette wheel, right? No one would really do that. It's not rational. But if you're betting red or green, you're going to win 50% of the time. And if you win big when you win, that's makes sense. Yeah, it's a tricky thing to do. I don't think that many firms have really struck that balance all that well. That's why firms like ours exist, because we have a contingent fee model that works for us. But I think you could I think there's a great opportunity for you, especially in the fraud and crypto space and all that, because there are going to be some, the one thing we know is the extent of people trying to steal other people's money using new technological approaches to defrauding people of their money is going to be enormous. So
well, that's great advice.
Arlo, I know we're getting close on time. You had mentioned you guys are currently still hiring. I guess what roles are you looking for, and what's your ideal applicant in those roles?
Don't get any ideas, Jeff.
Chief operating officer. We have a relocation bonus.
I like New York. Yeah,
we're concentrating, I think, on associates and analysts. And analysts might be called paralegals at other law firms. But I think what we're looking for now sort of is people who are very interested in maybe college grads, and they're thinking about going to law school, and maybe there's a few firms that have sort of set up programs that are sort of structured around that. And they've gotten some excellent talent, and these folks can do traditional paralegal work, but they can also do things sort of beyond that. They're not lawyers. They can't do legal work, but they can, I think, add a lot of value. And then we're looking for associates. Either people come to boutiques like ours with white collar defense if maybe they want to think about being a prosecutor in a couple of years and working closely with people who have that experience. So I think folks like that we'd be interested in. And also I think folks who are just sort of creative and ambitious and, want to be part of something growing, and who knows what will happen then.
Well, Arlo, it's really great to see you and to catch up. Congrats on your firm and all your success.
Yeah. Well, it's great. It's great to catch up with you, and it's an honor to be on your podcast. I hope to make it up to the great state of Maine.
If I'm in New York, I'll look you up, but definitely try to look us up if you ever get back to Maine. I know you haven't been back in a while.
I will definitely do that.
It was a pleasure meeting you, Arlo. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Ben.
Thanks for listening to Elevate, Build and Grow Your Law Firm. Share with colleagues if you found it valuable. Remember, building a successful law firm takes discipline, strategy, and determination. But you're not alone. Produced and powered by LawPods.